And we know the Silk Road takes off from the Middle East here. Next, please. And we see the Silk Road comes all the way across into Korea. I guess that's, is that Busan? There. But this is central hub right here, Chang'an, which is the Tang Dynasty, Liang Tang Dynasty. And later, we're going to see this area right here is where a Christian group settles. We're going to see that in a little bit. Next, please. So during the early Tang Dynasty, in the early 5 dynasties and Yuan dynasties, we find Christians are called by different names. Today, Chinese, in Mandarin you'd say Jidu Jiao is Christian. But back during the Tang is Jingjiao. And then Jiexie, and then Yeli Kuwan, which is a transliteration of a Mongolic word. So they transcribed it like, what's a Korean word English word you transcribe into Korean that sounds English? Coffee. Yeah, coffee. So that Yeli Kuwan is next slide, we'll see it here in a second. And Jingjiao used it, and it refers to the Church of the East, which the historians that you read back in, like Marco Polo and those guys, they would refer to the Church of the East as Nestorian when they're obviously Roman Catholic. And Yeli Kuwan was really used by the Mongols, but in the Chinese official histories, you can see it, Yeli Kuwan used. And what's interesting, when the Yuan dynasty, which is from 1279 to 1328 or 1368, there was an official bureau within the Yuan government, the Mongolian government, for Yeli Kuwan, Christians. There was a bureau that kept track of Christians. And the Dixia is from Persian. My Armenian friend, he tells me that there's a similar word they used to use in Armenia as well for that word, and that's also a transliteration of a Western word. And that word, Dixia, it was still in use when Matteo Ricci, an Italian Jesuit, went to China in the early 17th century. Okay, next. So there are records of Christians being accepted in the Tang Dynasty. So Alapin arrived in China 635, Chang'an, and the emperor accepted him. The emperor, Alapin is also a translation of Abraham, and the emperor believed Jesus to be like a Taoist or Buddhist. And I had a professor, we were talking about this one time years ago, that it's really hard to study Christianity in that time period because so much of the terminology they use is Buddhist terminology. So they use Buddhist terminology, but sometimes it doesn't make sense because you know they're talking about Christians. So so it all gets mixed up. And it's likely because you have an emperor that believes Jesus is a hero of the Taoists and Confucians. But it also, we have to look what's going on today. I mean, people are this ecumenical, we're all together. Oh, Jesus, Muslims, oh, Buddhists, we all have our way. And so the same thought was going back during the time. The emperor was even that way. It's like, okay, it's all good. So instead of Christ. But the emperor during the time when at this time protected the church. It was a good thing. It was buried. Don't know why this stele was buried, but it was buried. It wasn't recovered till 1625, like 800 years later. Next, please. There it is, a stele, and there, Gene. So it identifies it, and there's some Syriac written at the bottom. Next, and there's more detail on the. They call it the luminous religion, and I still don't understand. I don't think many people do why it's called the luminous religion at that time. Maybe it's enlightened. I don't know. Next. Close up. Okay. Next. And this is the what it is from the inscription. If you can read that. In the time of the accomplished Emperor Taizong, the illustrious and magnificent founder of the dynasty among the enlightened and holy men who arrived at the most virtuous Otopun in the country of Syria, observing the azure clouds, he bore the true sacred books, beholding the direction of the winds, he braved difficulties and dangers. In the year 635, he arrived at China. So, he was a Christian from Syria. Next. And it's believed that the Syriac monk, Adam, was the one who wrote all this. And he's actually, he was born in China, and his grandfather was from what is modern day Afghanistan. And his father was asked to come help put down a rebellion, a famous rebellion during the time, the Andushan rebellion. Next. There was a monastery and a church there near Xi'an, and it still remains. Next. So, Central Asia, there were a number of tribes: the Kiriak, the Naiman, the Uyghur, and the Ongut. And we can see this one is going to be our main focus here, which a lot of my research was on. But you see they're really sloppy in their writing, that they wrote it how it sounds. So Wong, this is Wong, Yo. But the actual pronunciation, they're trying to sound out Ongut, which is probably, it's a Turkic language. So Wong at that time was also pronounced Yo. So they were sloppy in it, they didn't keep it consistent. Next. And here we see this is right up towards the beginning of the Mongol Empire. The Kiryat were here, the Tatar, Bayat, Murgid, the Naiman. These two big, both these groups were Christian. This is big enough that it could have been called a nation. And that whole area, Mongolia, and this is where the Khitan and the Jin dynasty. This was Liao. I pronounce Liao in Korean. No, the Liao dynasty. This is up here that comes up into Manchuria. So the Khitan, Russians still refer to China as Khitan, and the Mongols do too. Khitan. Next. I already touched on that, the pronunciation and how we got to it. When Marco Polo traveled to China, he would search for Ong Khan. Now, Ong Khan was a Kiryat, and He searched for him, and so that's kind of, there was a lot of confusion with some of the Western travelers that traveled to China and Central Asia at that time. Again, we talked about at the time that Kiryat and Naaman were both believed to be descendants of the wise men who went to see the Christ child, Matthew 2. Khan was Genghis Khan's father's best friend. They were blood brothers. And Khan was Christian. And Hulagu, which is the grandson of Genghis Khan, his son was married to the Kiryat princess of that tribe that went to see, believed to have gone to see Jesus when he was born. Next. And so, Barhebras, and these two guys both wrote about the conversion of the Kiryat. And they believed they had a vision to see this saint that was an early Christian in China area. And so they wrote about it. And this is how we have a record of that. And they got baptized. The whole tribe, when the king became a Christian, everybody else in the tribe became Christian as well. Next. And here we have another record of this writing about the relationship with the Kiryat and the Magi, those who went to, the wise men who went to see Jesus. Another historian in the 14th century wrote about it. Next. We go next. The Uyghur. A lot of talk in the news about the Uyghurs and today in northwest China. You guys hear about the Uyghurs? They say they're putting them in camps, and the Chinese are persecuting them. They're Muslim now, but at one time they had been Buddhist, and sometime during this time period of the Tang, groups of them became Christian. And we can see this in the writings in some of the travelers and some of the official records as well. Next. Now the Ongun we talked about, they started out, they were the Central Asian tribes that were North China on the Mongolian border out where Xinjiang province is. You heard of Xinjiang? Northwest China? So they started up there and they moved down south. And early, they're using these names originally. And Zhuxie and the Chuye. And we don't know if those are two distinct ethnicities or one, but we know that the Chateau came from them. And we don't know if those are transliterations. There's not enough information now. If those are transliterations of the names, or that's just how the Chinese call them. And they turned over and became dependent on the Tang dynasty back in about 650 to 795. Next. So the Tang dynasty ended, and by the end of the Tang dynasty, the Chateau were pretty prominent. They were guards, and they guarded the emperors. They sort of became like mercenary because they were fierce warriors. And at the end of the Tang dynasty, we had the Five Dynasty period. Everybody heard of the Five Dynasties? Five Dynasties in Chinese history? No? So after the Five Dynasties, three of the Five Dynasties were ruled by Chateau. They're not Han people, not Han Chinese people. They were ruled by a Chateau. And there was three groups of them. The Ma, Jiao, which is Zhou, and the Tiandu, which is that area showed above the river, the Yellow River. That's where they settled. The Jiao went over more over towards the Jilin province, that area, eastern China. Next. So we also, this group is also called at the time the White Tatar. And again, there's various characters used to denote them, and we find, what's this, how do you say this in Korean now? You know? You know that? Anyway, well there's no, I define that one, put it in, there's no, it's too old to, you know, but anyway, so there's, the White Tatar is, it doesn't denote race, it's just a description. The Ongud, the Shatto who became the Ongud were White Tatar. And the Mongols were referred to as Black Tatar, but it was a pejorative, so it was never used in the official records. Next. So again, we say that Ongud became synonymous with the White Tatar. There's a historian, Rashid al-Din, who links Ongud with the wall. Ongud, the wall, was pronounced Ongud. So he believes that that's where they came from, because again, even as the Ongud progressed into the Jin and Liao dynasties, they protected the Great Wall. And again, they're Christian by middle of 1100 AD. And remember, again, there's confusion a lot of times with Ongkan, which is Kiryat and not Ongud. Some of the Western travelers mix that up. Next. So the official Yuan histories identify a Christian, Ala Kush, whose brother's name is Yesui. We know what Yesui is? Could be a word for Jesus. So, yeah, so the Ongud, their history, you know, they name Jesus, you see names like Jesus, Simon, George, Western names. Next. And here, it also see the word, this is called Foxpaw. Do you know what this is, script, what's this script called in Korean? Is there a name for it? I don't know what it is. Anyway, Foxpaw comes from Tibetan, Central Asia, Uyghurs and the Tibetans use it. And Erdogan, which is the Mongolian word for Christian, is also seen in Foxpaw script. Okay, next. So, this historian, he's a contemporary at the time. He writes about the conversion of the Kiryat, and also this guy too. He tells a similar story. So there's more than one account of these conversions of the people, the Kiryat in the Ongud. Next. These two guys, they are believed to be Ongud. They were from Shandong, Gaotang area, and they traveled to, they went as far as Jerusalem and one ended up being some kind of patriarch for the Church of the East in a large area that extended into Russia. And they originally came from the Shandong area. Everybody knows where Shandong, China. It's right across the water. Qingdao, Shandong. Okay, next. So there, Shandong, see the sticks out. They're from this area here. Next. We also have other Western sources. These guys are Muslim writers and wrote the histories of that time as well. And it gives us a good account. They're pretty reliable. And they match with other records. They match with what they write, also matches with the secret history of the Mongols and some of the Chinese records as well. And there's English translations of these now, of their writings. So it's pretty good. They get into pretty good detail about the Christians at that time, and they're pretty objective. Next. And again, more historians, I think when we look at history, we have to verify. We just can't go by one guy's word, but there's many others. Next. Then we have Western travelers, and these are all Catholics, Roman Catholics that come from Europe. And the first one is John Plano Carpini. Next. Franciscan, and he comes, and there's one really good book about it, and translates his stuff. It talks about him, and Guyuk Khan, he witnessed his coronation, and Guyuk is the Mongol Empire was divided up. He was the one that was the emperor of the Mongolian, or the Islamic area. Next. Then William of Rubruck, he tried to convert Kublai Khan. Is Kublai Khan, is that the same in Korean? Kublai? Yeah. He tried to convert Kublai Khan. And actually Kublai Khan was married to a Christian. Next. John of Montecrino. He is from Italy. He went to Beijing, and there were a lot of Ongun. He converted Prince George, an Ongun, a descendant of Alakush, we talked about earlier. He converted him to Catholicism. So Alakush went from being a Christian with the Church of the East to Roman Catholic under John of Montecrino. And with him, about 6,000 other Ongun went with him and became Catholic. When John of Montecrino died, they went back to the Church of the East. so I don't understand that. Oh yeah, and I think it's significant that John of Montecrino translated the New Testament into Uyghur. In 1299, the church Kambalik is before Beijing was called Beijing. It was called Kambalik during the Yuan dynasty, and there was a church built there at the time. Next. Marco Polo. Everybody heard of Marco Polo? He gets some of it wrong, but you can understand why, because if you have a limited language ability and you don't know the language, you can get things mixed up if they sound the same or without a good understanding. But he describes a church in Hangzhou. So Hangzhou is southern China. So there are churches, Christian churches in southern China, and that would probably mean there might have been churches in during the Sung, but they just weren't Sung dynasty previous to the Mongols that weren't written about. So anyway, there was a Christian church in Hangzhou. Anybody been to Hangzhou? No? Anybody been to China? Where?
Beijing.
Okay. You know where Hangzhou is?
Yeah.
Okay. So Hangzhou is a nice city. All right, next. And then there, Yangzhou and Hangzhou, there's a church in Yangzhou as well. So this guy, another Western traveler, describes seeing Christians in China. Next. And then last, this guy here, he went there. There's not much, but we do know he went there to China as well. All right, next. So, see the Mongol expansion. I found it interesting. Why didn't it go to Jeju? Because they left their horses there, didn't they? So whoever did that, they didn't put Jeju in there. So, all right. Next. Well, hey, go back to that again. We can see how the different divisions of the Mongol Empire are by these colors, the different divisions of the empire. So each had their own emperor, but it was all the Mongol Empire and the descendants of Genghis Khan ruled those areas. But the Mongols, they went up as far as up into here too, yeah. So that's you know. So the Central Asian language. All right, next. And here we go. This is an area where the Oghuz were, and Tianduk, and right here north of the Yellow River. Everybody knows the Yellow River. Heard of it? Yeah. So right up here. That's where we settle. And next. And here's some. This is stuff we're finding now. I got a book at home. I don't have all the pictures. I wasn't going to put them all in here. But, they're finding more and more, artifacts as people dig and new construction and whatnot. But this is a Christian grave, Inner Mongolia. You see by the cross there. Next. And here's another one. We see they use Fakpa script here too on this one. This is a gravestone that uses Fakpa. I think that design is in Korea too. Similar to their design, Fakpa. Like in furniture, you see it's not the language, but it's a similar design. Next. And there's when you take a stone or something and you rub it, stone, that's what that's from. This is from Fujian province. So found this, and so Christians were all along the eastern part of southern China there. Next. So what happened? What happened to the Christians there? Were they true believers, or were they just Christians in name only? Because when the Yuan dynasty ended, there's no no evidence in any writings or anything through the Ming Dynasty, which comes right after the Yuan, of any Christians. But, so I don't know. Anybody have any idea on what happened? I think some of the Christian influence that was in North China also went into Korea, because it was, the Ongas were settled over there in the Manchuria area as well. And, in 1933, I was reading somewhere, 1933, they found some people in Inner Mongolia that still used the word for Christian that had been used during the Yuan dynasty. So they were Christian and they still used the same terminology as I mean, that's like 800 years later. So I found that quite interesting. Anyway, any questions? Everybody's quiet. You thinking about exams? Well, I don't know. How are your classes at Bob Jones? When I was in Indiana, I had a class. I was the only student in the class. I couldn't sleep. I had to be totally engaged. And I had another class where there were just 3 of us, so we couldn't sit there, and it's not like take notes and memorize. We had to totally engage and have to discuss. It's like, hey, what's this? I mean, that's the learning process. Anyway, any questions?
What is your opinion about the Christians who used to live in that time period? They disappeared?
I don't know. I think.
So they stopped and they disappeared?
Well, maybe they just went underground. Because the Ming was Han Chinese, Han people. I wish I had talked more. I'm not talking about Han Korean, Han Chinese people. So, Hanzo. But they're against anything foreign, which kind of seemed like that's what happened when communism took over, right? Except for their philosophy. They took a foreign philosophy to kind of duplicitous. But yeah, I think they probably went underground. A lot of them went up north. The Mongol Empire still existed up north. The Mongols went north too. As far as the Ovid, there was, or Shato. The Shato people, there's still some that live in Gansu province, which is, how do I describe it? Gansu is north central western China, north of, everybody know where Sichuan province is? Sichuan? Yeah. Say it. Sachin? Sachin? Okay, it's north of Sachin, northwest of Sachin, and there's Shato people there, but they're Buddhist. They're one group that split off, and they're Buddhist. Unless they're atheists like the rest of a lot of.
So they're minorities.
Right.
They didn't.
There's no evidence of any Ovid today. There's a lot of description. They were warriors. I mean, for the Jin dynasty, the Liao dynasty, the Christians guarded the wall. They were fierce warriors. They were known for their loyalty. So, and it's my opinion that Genghis Khan, his sons married daughters of Ovid because, hey, now we got legitimacy for royal legitimacy because these people ruled during the 5 dynasties as well. So, established a legitimacy for their rule. The double.
about that question in Wikipedia.
Yeah.
This Wikipedia about it says, after Yuan dynasty is destroyed by Ming,
Right,
so Yuan is fundamentally Mongolian.
right.
So those Christians went back to north. Which is
Yeah,
Mongolia.
lot did, yes.
So I think that was the why. We cannot see that.
Right, but there were others that were like in Shandong, and we saw that there were some Fujian, Hangzhou, what happened? So, and the history got lost because like the Jesuits that went there, Matthew Ricci, who's quite famous, there's a lot written about him, they were surprised to learn all this because they didn't know about it. There were no records of it at the time.
So there were no evangelist activities so that to try to spread the gospel for the neighboring people, or there was secluded community?
Right, yeah, all we know is this official stuff. I mean, we don't know what was, local groups. We don't know how many people were literate. I mean, the written languages at the time, only the elite could read, I mean, there wasn't widespread literacy in China until the 20th century. Because there was like an official language. Still, that stuff's hard to read. It's not colloquial language. It's not like reading a novel.
Yeah, the modern Turkey, it's a Muslim country, but in the early church, in Paul's period, there were a lot of churches.
Right. And
But all Arabics, there's no Christian influence in modern Turkey.
well,
Their heritage.
they're Turkic. When we talk Turkic in that period, Turkic is defined by languages and not ethnicity. So Eastern Turkic. So they're a Turkic language, which is kind of a Mongolic
Yeah, the
language.
Koreans can easily
Right.
learn Turkish.
Right, well, Turkic and Mongolian were different, as well as Chinese. I mean, you can say Chinese, but what's Chinese? Someone in Shanghai and someone in Beijing that only know Beijing Hua or Shanghai Hua, they can't mutually talk. But it's a Chinese language, right, sort of like that, I guess. I don't think you have that in Korea, do you? I mean, one area you can't understand another area? Is it? Just accents? All right.
Thank you, Monster.
저는 처음 들었습니다. 저렇게 중국에 예전부터 이렇게 기독교가 들어갔다는 건 처음 어떤 듣긴 했던 것 같은데 오늘 이렇게 보니까 이렇게 와 저렇게 옛날부터 크리스천들이 들어갔었구나 이렇게 참 놀랍네요. 근데 오늘날 왜 이렇게 사라졌는지 이제 초대교회들도 여러 있었는데 초대교회 영향력은 사라지고 이제 머슬럼들이 장악했잖아요. 그 컨트리들은. 그런 걸로 봐서는 초창기에 그렇게 기독교의 영향력이 있었는데 지금은 없어졌다. 그게 왜 그런지는 참 의아하기도 하네요. 하여튼, thank you much, sir. It was very instructive. I didn't know that that way back then that there was Christians moving into the Mongolian or Mongol and China.
Well, what I also find interesting, this is pre-Christian, was the language of that the people in China had. I was reading that linguists believe it's similar to what Noah spoke.
Okay.
And that's why in the, I don't know how to say it in Korean, the Shurji, the early writing, Chinese writing Shurji, I don't know how to say it in Korean. but it describes the emperor worshiping, making sacrifice to God. It much like the Old Testament people, Christians did, or not Christians, but Jews did, and I find that quite interesting because they're not far removed. If the Han Dynasty or the Shao Dynasty began while Noah was still alive, these people would know about it.
I
So-
think that there are some scholars try to explain the Chinese character from the Chinese character,
Oh yeah,
connect the Chinese character to the biblical story.
and the writings that after the Tower of Babel
Right.
are
Or even
pictographed.
the Garden of Eden,
Pictograph.
Satan's
Right.
temptation, and there's the serpent, Magi, Satan.
Right.
That is I don't exactly know, but I heard about it.
And you know, you look at it, Seth was living at the same time as Noah. They must have talked to each other,
Yeah, I mean,
you know, I mean, they're family. So,
Anyway, thank you, sir. 저 질문은 없으시죠? 그러면 오늘 많이 늦었는데 마지막 찬송 있어요? 없어요? 있으면 우리 마지막 찬송하고 부르고